To order. First order on the work session tonight is electric service standards discussion. Mr. Michael Allison, how you doing, Michael?
Fine, how are y'all?
You sure you doing all right? Yeah, what you did there? Skiing accident?
It means I was back in Colorado. No, actually, no, I'm toward the meniscus. So I just want to take some time. I think Lisa and I had talked a little bit. One of the things I noticed was we didn't really have a set of standards for when people are doing new construction or remodeling things, or security lighting, street lighting, things like that. And it was kind of a, whoever happened to answer the phone that day is what happened. So what we did is, as a group, we kind of took down and developed a set of standards that covers a lot of those things. Where we want the meters, how far clearance issues are for the meters, where we want them above height, how many security lights we'll put on a resident, a couple little street light issues that we've been running into. And we talked to Eric Cortinas, and he said, you know, the best way to get it so that it's enforceable is to get it included in the code of ordinances. So presented it to y'all this time, and if you guys agree, I'd like to put it on the agenda for next time and then moving forward.
So this is not code.
Not yet.
Well, I mean, it's not part of the building code. It's not part of the IBC.
It's basically how we want. So, you know, we need to have 3 feet in front of an electric meter. If somebody wants a security light, what we'll do to give them a security light. If somebody wants a street light, the requirements for street lights, that kind of thing.
Okay, and council, you should have this in your package, and there's a lot of technical discussion in there. So if we were to, we would add this to our, basically the ordinance that adopted the
electric.
I forget which IBC we're at. Are we at 2018, 17, 19?
I think when Lisa and I were talking, we put it in the electric, like section 26 or whatever that was, the next available electric thing.
Can you, what would be the pushback to this? What's the downside? I mean, it makes sense, but what would be, if somebody was going to argue against it, what would be their argument?
Honestly, the only argument I could see is one of the things that I'm asking for is compaction tests for transformers before we set a transformer. Because we've got quite a few that have settled, and then we have to go back and level them out or things like that. So one of the things that's included in there, maybe
is that like a subdivision?
New commercial. We'll typically set the transformers for residential.
Okay.
But new commercials, when the contractor's pouring the pad, I'd like to get a compaction test just to make sure that that transformer's not going to sink.
How expensive is that, Kevin?
I'm sorry?
Compaction test. Test the soil to put a transformer.
They're not that bad.
It's not something that they're going to come back and say we just cost them $10,000 on the project, right?
They'll come back and fuss.
A few $100,
go do it.
a couple $100, or
Yeah, I think about a couple hundred last I've checked.
See, I'm used to streets, not a pad. We test the whole street.
And basically just codifies, you know, the things we want to see when we're hooking up electric.
And I imagine that something like that might be kind of a work in progress too.
Yeah,
it can be
it'll
edited as you go along.
In fact, after I submitted it, I thought of another section, but I'll save that for next year. Which
I could see where this could go on and on and on.
Which would be renewables, you know, how we want to handle renewable energies.
Yeah, I think it's helpful to have some uniformity when deciding how to handle these things. But as is the case in everything we do, there's always special circumstances or special cases. Do you feel that this gives you the ability to operate if there are special circumstances to make exceptions when need be?
Yeah, there's a lot of sections in there that says we'll do it this way or per the electric superintendent or their designee.
It's a good thing to do.
So because, yeah, I understand there's a lot of special circumstances and sometimes you can't quite get 3 feet, maybe 2.5 is good. You know, if there's nothing really behind it or something like that, a 4-foot fence, those situations.
Any other questions?
I just say, Mike, it looks like you put a lot of effort into this. Appreciate that, and just. Is it fairly commonplace to have?
I was surprised we didn't have.
Okay.
Okay. To be honest.
Thank you.
So everywhere I've been, and most of the utilities I've ever dealt with has a set of standards. In fact, where I came from, the standards alone were that thick.
All right.
So
Well, appreciate
obviously
that.
we don't need that here.
Anything else I had on that? All right. right, you think you can, have this in a form of an ordinance or an amendment that's ready? Do y'all feel comfortable introducing it at the next meeting?
I do.
And I'm
Like I
available if you
said,
think of any questions, just give me a call.
Yeah, my only concern would just be if something that we have to come back and relax, later, but as long as you have
Yeah, we've
some
got a
kind
lot
of elastic
flexibility.
clause in
Yeah,
there.
we've got a lot of flexibility. I think the opening paragraph says, it's not intended to cover all situations, on the very first paragraph.
Okay. All right. Well, it sounds like the council's saying that, bring us that amendment for the ordinance to the next meeting. And I'd encourage everybody just to look it over and,
Yeah, give me a call if you have any questions.
and if you need to amend it between now and then, just try to have the mayor or you email it to us and so we can look over anything that
Okay.
might
Yeah,
change.
that another section, it's going to be a lot. I'll save it for next year.
Okay.
Because I got to talk to AMEA about some renewables, how they do them, because it's weird how they do renewables.
Okay.
Okay, thank you
All
guys.
right.
Yeah,
Thank you,
Mike.
Mike.
Next, Mr. Peterson, discussion of water and sewer connection fees and expenses.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I think we'll press the reset button to back in what February we discussed this prior to. And basically what we're talking about doing is looking at the capacity requirements to provide a service to a single family residential connection. And you look at that at being maybe 225 gallons a day, and what you look at in terms of what the charge is to connect to the water system is what that part of what it takes to have a well supply water to a treatment plant to treat it and a tank to store it and some transmission capability to direct it into the distribution system. You come up with a value that it costs us to provide that amount of water to that one connection. And so that would be in water, actually in water and sewer both. We've got $1,500 that would apply to a capacity charge. That would be a connection fee to get the available water or the wastewater conveyed from their house into the plant and treated. And then you would start building on what that same capacity equates to as you get to larger meters. So if they put a 1-inch meter on a commercial or multifamily residential, then there's a multiplier for that's 2.5 times the equivalent residential connection. If you put a 2-inch meter on, the multiplier is 7.5 times, because you have to provide or make available that volume of water to that location through infrastructure improvements that are able to deliver that water for that particular location. So that's the premise of how all this is set up. And then what we looked at too is, out of town customers, we're having to extend further out into the system to capture those markets. And so the transmission and production capability has to extend beyond what would be the normal city limit area of Fairhope. So there would be a multiplier of 1.5 times those same values for the capacity charge. Each one of these has different provisions for installation cost as well. If we run a 3/4 inch water service, we would charge $500 for that installation fee. There are some places within new subdivisions that water services are already run, so they would just pay the capacity charge since the meter's there. If somebody wants to build on a vacant lot on a county road or any other street that water had not previously been provided, then they would pay the capacity charge plus the installation charge. So that's what that relates to there. And then there's some basic information on what type of material we would prefer to have or expect to see when they run sewer laterals from the main to the property line. We're showing where we're going to ask for a clean out at the property line when they do tie on to the sewer line. And in the sewer, if we participate with a developer to upgrade pumping capacity or to extend an off-site force main from, a location where a developer may want to develop, and where we can get back to a location within our existing system where capacity is available for that transmission, then we may upsize that force main, or we may participate in some of it. But anybody who develops between the developer who has built that and where our connection was, they will pay an accessibility charge, basically, that says, if you're gonna have to tie onto this force main that we built, then you're gonna pay us in charge of a force main that would be $15 times what would be the square root of the property in terms of area that it would serve. If it's a gravity connection, then it would be $35 times the square root of the area of the property, which is to say that would eliminate them from having to build a lift station themselves, and that we're planning well enough in advance so that we can accommodate as much as we can out of each drainage basin where a lift station would provide service. And so that's the premise with all of these it's a different concept than what we have now with capacity charges. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I finally got back. It was a lot on water, and I finally got through the old ordinances and the multiple revisions and made it to the sewer. So let me understand, if you just give you an example, if you had a meter size of 1 inch,
Right.
And you had water and sewer, the capacity asset fee would be $37.50. And if you needed the installation, it would be $7.50 for the water. And then if you also required sewer, then you would have a capacity asset fee of $37.50 for that as well.
Correct.
So that the $37.50, the $7.50, and the $37.50.
That's correct.
Okay.
And that would be for commercial. That would be a commercial requirement with a 1 inch water meter.
Right. But now, if the single family,
Right.
the 3/4 inch meter
Yes.
size, it has under multifamily just one. It's the same as the commercial.
Right. We're only going to allow one house to be served off a 3/4 inch meter. Now, if you've got a duplex complex and you want to put a 1 inch meter, we would allow it to 4 single-family residential connections on that as a duplex type, 2 duplexes could be served by 1 meter. And, and we'll try to discourage people from doing that, basically, because then somebody's got to be responsible for a water bill for 4 people, who may not have to pay a water bill, could wind up using a lot of water.
Okay, so the 3/4 inch is limited to one, always
Correct.
one. And then 2, 3, or 4 is that 1 inch. Would be
Correct.
The
And that's
example that I gave.
Yes, so if it's a 1 inch, and now if you've got a single family house and you just want a bigger meter, well, then we'll charge you the single family connection fee and then charge you more to install a 1 inch meter. The $750 would be the installation charge.
That would be my question, because sometimes houses are set too far from the
Right.
borderline for a 3/4 to accommodate. So they'd have to do a 1 inch.
Yeah, they're welcome to put a 1 inch in. We'll just charge them the installation rate on a 1 inch water meter.
Even for a single-family residence?
For a
they would-
single family
even though they have to
residence.
run 1 inch?
And that's the same with, when you get to multifamily, if you have an RV park or a hotel, we have multipliers built into that. An apartment would be 2/3 of, if you have 60 apartments, then it would be the same as 40 equivalent residential units. And so the multiplier would be 40 times the 1,500. And then they would be able to decide, well, I know you're saying that we can use a 3 inch meter to serve that, but we might want a 4 inch meter. Or what we would prefer to do is look at, well, let's get your distribution system in there where fire hydrants are located where the buildings need them. And let's serve a master meter for a building instead of the whole complex. If you've got a 20 unit building, then we get you a 2 inch meter for that. And then the next 20-unit building, you can have a 2-inch meter for that one. Then you can better identify buildings that have higher usages, and it's a better way. And then we'll maintain the distribution system with fire hydrants inside the complex. And typically there would be fire mains in there too, which, you know, they would want to have fire services for those buildings. And I don't know that anybody who's in the apartment business wants to maintain a water distribution system on the site. I don't think that's typically what their business model would, you know, have them do.
Well, these fees would go into a special account for future upgrades. You mentioned, let's say you have a commercial application where you're gonna have to put in eventually a lift station. You may not need it when the first 10 units are built, but you might need it after 25 are built.
Right, and I don't know that we've said anything in the ordinance about directing those funds into any specific reserve account for capital improvements.
It seems that if we're gonna go up on the fees and charge people, that it would be wise to put it in some kind of designated account so that it could be used for that intended purpose, right?
All the money in each department does go back into that department, and the fact that we do have all of this infrastructure for the next 5 years, we're going to be using all of it. Doesn't matter what account it is. So these funds used to not go specifically in each department. In fact, electric was typically tapped to pay for most everything for the city. So, you know, these funds are now exclusive to that utility revenue and the fees and things like that, but they'll all be used for the infrastructure upgrades.
I think there's a different way that these fees are put into different reserve accounts now, and there may, and I can't remember them, but I think it would be wise to add some language as to where the diversion of those funds would go.
And we talked about too having possibly something reserved just for land acquisition for utilities, because that is something that will always be in the future, and right now it's been kind of very reactionary. Okay, we got to buy this piece of land for that and that piece of land, so we thought that would be good.
That's a good idea. You know, any reserve account does have, you know, an anticipated amount you need to put in there annually for some future cost, and then when you pay it out, you can say, well, yeah, we saved money for this roof, and now we need a new roof. And,
right.
So, and I know that you know, we'll have to start somewhere with that. I don't know if that's something we can incorporate into an ordinance that would specify. And there may be, I'm looking at Kim back there, there may already be, we have so many different numbers and accounts, and it's a line item in the budget, and it's, you know, line 70020, and that means that that's what it is. But and it may be just as simple as that, but even if that's I know, if it's designated
But
already.
it's not going to the city. You're welcome.
Yeah, now that I would like to accomplish. But as far as dictating we buy land or we buy water plants or we buy well, whatever, you know, I would prefer it to be capital improvements on a general basis. And that could be transmission lines, it could be, you know,
That could be a catch-all for,
Yeah, I think we can define what capital improvements for transmission and production could be, and I think as long as we fit that broad definition, we would be fine. And same thing with wastewater, you know, there would be planned improvements in lift stations and transmission systems for that.
what would be the split? Was it 50% to that, or?
I think if you're collecting them fees, I think 100% goes into the fund, but it allows you to use it for any of these items that are defined as part of what the capital improvement needs are for the capacity.
I think we have a fund for capital improvements specific to each utility, and I think that makes sense, unless you want to fine tune it later. But again, we need all of that right now for the next 5 years.
Would you commingle the water and the sewer
I don't think we would do
revenues,
that.
or would you try to keep them
They
separate?
would be separate.
Okay. Counselor, what questions do you have?
The installation fees, did they change from what they are now to the new? Are they the same?
I think right now, we have a specific installation fee for 3/4 and 1 inch. And after that, I think it's based on the cost.
I mean, is it the same amount of money? Only reason I'm asking, I happened to be asked this today on a buddy meter. He wants to install a buddy meter, and he said it costs $500.
Right.
So I'm looking at the $500, I'm thinking, well, then that installation fee must not have changed, since I'm looking at for the new.
No, it's just predicated on an average cost of a 3/4 inch service. It had nothing to do with the existing buddy fee charge that we have now. But what we do want to do is get our accounting system set up where we can identify the cost of a 3/4 inch service, you know, and we can start projecting what those installation costs are, and then we can use those projections to change what it
As far as
costs.
labor machine is more than $500.
When we start losing money on them, we can start changing what it takes to really do it. But right now, we just don't have the information available for it.
And again, this has got nothing to do with this, but can they hire an installation done? Or does the city have to do an installation for their meters?
I think we'll let anybody who's got the homeowner you're talking about?
Right.
Yeah, they can hire somebody to do that.
Okay.
Now, we'd like to tighten up a little bit to where at least we're available on site when they tap it.
Yeah, no problem.
But other than that.
Again, I was
think-
just asked this, it just happened to be today.
Right.
This came up, so.
Yeah,
And Kevin,
And you know who they want to hire.
no. Yours truly?
I'm hoping you say no.
Well, you can do it.
No, only the city can do it. I'll bail out.
Kevin, I was looking at some other language, so if you had mentioned this, I apologize. So currently, your 3/4 inch connection is $550. And this proposes it to be $500.
Right.
And the 1 inch connection is currently $650. And that's proposed to be $750. So, and then in the vast majority of cases, I'm going to assume in single family,
Yes.
that goes down by $50.
And the vast majority of single family are in subdivisions that already have services there. Now, the buddy meter's a different animal in that regard because they come in and some of the home builders, I understand, are putting an irrigation system onto their water system. Well, guess what? They use a lot of water and we charge sewer based on that water usage, and it doesn't take them a month or two to realize if I'm going to irrigate my yard at that rate every month,
That's exactly.
I need, go ahead, let's put the buddy meter
I know
in
why his rates were going up.
and get out of the paying sewer for my
The
irrigation.
first thing I thought of, I said, how many meters you got in your yard? He said, 1. I said, you need a buddy, you got an irrigation? Yeah. So then you need a buddy meter
Right.
for the irrigation system to take the sewer off.
Or, you know, if they decide that they don't need to irrigate their yard, that's okay with us too, really. I mean, that's conserving that resource, although, it, you
That
know,
ain't gonna
it
happen.
suffers a little bit on the revenue side.
Well, Jay, I know you remember everything, so how did this stall in February? Do you remember? It had to be Robert, he's not here.
Well, I think there was a little bit of apprehension on when you start to get a big hotel complex, and let's equate it to one of the Grand Hotel size. That there was a pretty significant amount of money required for the connection fee, for both gas or for both water and wastewater. But, and if I remember the conversation right, when you start looking at what it takes to build a hotel like the Grand Hotel, then the money we're talking about really isn't that significant to the entire project cost.
Well, it's not, and if I was going to try to sell it to them, I would say that it's cheaper for us to do this than for you to go in and put in your lift stations and whatnot.
Oh, it absolutely is
solely for that.
cheaper,
So it would say,
certainly.
it really does. It beats the other
And we
option
can
that we could consider.
look at what other places charge, and I think we'd be fairly consistent with how other places do that. And I can be happy to do some more research. Now that I got an administrative assistant, I can actually get that done quicker.
That's awesome.
What's your pleasure, council? It's probably I'm going to say the third time we've looked at this.
And I will say the anticipated revenue based on about 400 connections, we're talking about somewhere in the $350,000 range. I mean, if you had the $900 difference between the $600 we charge now and the $1,500, you're looking at $360,000 with 400 connections, which is what I think we're on target to meet, and it could be more than that, and that's on top of the 250 we would have gotten. So, or 240, I guess.
All right, council, I'm looking at you guys for some direction.
And I will say that the mayor's correct. It looks like we're going to be using some money pretty quickly, and, you know, I don't know how much we got in the well, but if it runs dry, we're going to need to find some other mechanism to be trying to find it.
Yeah, I think it sounds good. I mean, I would love to know what Robert would have to say about it since he's in construction, but yeah, I think we should move forward.
I got a strong feeling we'll find out next meeting.
Yeah,
Jay?
so, yeah, let's introduce it at the next meeting.
Okay.
We'll look at some verbiage on where to put the money.
And there is some verbiage in the old
There is
ordinances that I was
some,
just
yes.
pointing that
There
out
certainly
to
is.
the clerk here. There is some simple language, which is probably best for that, but
Absolutely.
it is stated.
And while I'm up here real quick, we've gotten a quote for an odor control device for
Yeah,
Twin
I-
Beach.
one thing though is, I'll back on this real quick. So Mayor and Mr. Peterson, I would, just because there's some language that designates where this goes, I think you should look at that
Yeah,
and
I
and
was just saying.
state whether or not that still makes sense,
But-
because it's pretty simple.
Right, well,
And it may not be valid, and that's, I'm reading it.
But what we did is we projected very conservatively the outlay of money for the next 5 years with projected income. And again, it was very, very conservative. But we are going to need a very, at least a year period where we're going to need to borrow money.
So what I'm
And
saying
then pay
is,
it back
yeah.
quickly.
So this
That's what we're
formula
working
is
on.
not necessarily set in stone, because I told you there's some language in here. But anyway, take a look at it. It
We'll
won't
do
take you
that.
very long
We'll
to
do that.
decide. All right. I'm
And
sorry,
so,
go ahead.
well, that's okay. We met with the residents around the Twin Beach lift station, and unfortunately walked up on a problem we had that we've corrected, and hopefully everybody understands that problems are gonna happen, and we're gonna address them as we find them. But the odor issue has been something that's been going on and on and on with the people that are in that area, and I've heard several people who ride by there and say they've noticed an odor problem. I've been by there several times, and I don't know, everybody has a different tolerance for those kinds of things, and I appreciate that. But regardless of all of that, we want to be good neighbors, and we want to do the best we can to minimize our impact on anybody. And so, but this unit, they went out and took some sulfur, hydrogen sulfide gas detection levels, and they've come up with a model. It's a 2050-450 unit that's, anyway, it's about $10,450 is what the unit is, and we're gonna have to change out the
$250,000?
$10,450,000 is the unit. that-
Wait a minute, now, 10,450,000?
I'm sorry,
I
$10,450.
Okay.
I knew that it was 10,000, and that's why I was like.
So, but anyway, and it's got the activated carbon package in it
Okay.
for the filtration, but I would like, I don't know if we can walk anything on tonight, but I do want to proceed with as much due diligence as possible to get this thing installed. The delivery's about 3 to 4 weeks if we were to order it today.
And this is really just an ASAP fix on the smell, but the overall fix will happen in the course of all the
Right.
infrastructure
Yeah,
upgrades.
The 10,450 is for the dispensing system?
It's for the system to neutralize the odor coming out of the lift
Okay,
station.
and then we have to buy some
Well, they
product.
come with the cartridges, but every 3 or 4 months, we're gonna replace them, and I'm not sure what that value
Right,
is. But,
we probably are ordering that in bulk now anyway, right? We would have that in stock?
well, this is one of the first units we'll have that'll have those types of cartridges available to us. Right now, we're feeding a liquid chemical that neutralizes it in place. But that chemical can clogged lines that feed it, and we can lose our feed rates because of that. The LMI pumps that are the feed pumps, they can go bad. And so we really don't have a good maintenance program for maintaining those systems, you know, day to day to day. And apparently if one quits feeding, you find out about it pretty quickly. And, you know, to get the people that are around it that have the nuisance issues to call us is not something they do every day either, but they do complain. And sometimes it's on the weekends when nobody's available really to respond that well. And it's our odor control contract with the Biomagic people. I'm going to guess, and Jay may correct me if I'm wrong, but it's somewhere in the $350,000 range a year. And what I'd like to do is try to start to eliminate.
It's 225.
10,000, 450,000?
10,000, 150,000.
225, we've spent as much this year. We'll be-
Picking on you.
250,000? 225?
Do you want to do it?
Maybe that's why we're losing having so many odor problems. We're not
Yeah,
spending all the
that's
money.
putting enough on odor. Well, plus, I think that would
Should've been
serve, I
300.
think that serves Jay's house down there, I'm not sure.
But anyway,
Get that under
but
control.
however much money that is, we hope to start to dwindle that down as we add these site-specific components to address the problems. And, you know, last year we had some budgeted items for odor control, and we were going to do kind of a test sample, mostly at the south section lift station where we were close by. But we're working on this one. This one's become more of a priority now, and I think we just need to move on it.
My question would be, and maybe you just mentioned something about it, but this is a quick fix for the odor that's being caused.
Correct.
What about whatever underlying problem there is that's causing the odor? I mean, is that something that's going to be improved with the upgrades, and so that there won't be?
Yeah,
The
the
station's
side stream storage tanks that we're proposing for that location will basically replace that lift station. But there will be a vent system on that that'll have a similar unit like this on it that will be part of that infrastructure.
And I guess what I'm really trying to say, and I'm not doing a very good job of being clear about it, is I want to make sure there's not a safety issue that we're covering up with a deodorizer, so that they put mercaptan in natural gas so it stinks, so you know that it's there. If we're doing something to mask some hazardous condition by deodorizing.
No, I think it neutralizes the hydrogen sulfide.
Okay.
And I don't know the answer to your question specifically, but I think the whole purpose of that activated carbon is to absorb that hydrogen sulfide into the media that's in that filter.
In answer to your question, it doesn't do anything to mask, because when you have to go down to those tanks, no matter what you have to air them out, no matter what. If you're gonna work in those tanks, you air them out. And so, it's not a day-to-day function that you go down in. And so, but when you do, and you have to perform work, like take the pumps out or replace piping or what have you down there, they'll put it's kind of like you see with the telephone companies, they'll put an air tank there. And what it does, it blows the air out of the top and circulates all what I call clean air in there. It just circulates it in there for the time being while you're working in there. So no, it's not you won't have a safety issue by masking this on a day-to-day issue as far as people working in it.
Do you have to have an open atmosphere to prevent a vacuum in that type of system in these lift stations?
You can add an inline pump to it, and you can, you can pump the air out of the wet well into this unit, but most of them are set up where as the water level rises in the wet well from the thing filling up, the gas escapes anyway,
Yeah.
and then as it comes back down, it actually goes the other way. But no, I don't think there's any real manipulation of the gases on the side, unless we decide we
I
want to
didn't know
put
if you had
force
to have
main
a
in.
siphon in there to allow the pumps to work properly without, so that you wouldn't just draw a vacuum, that you would draw the liquid and be able to pump it out, just using atmospheric pressure.
Yeah, it's just atmospheric pressure coming in and out of the wet well that vents it, yeah.
Basically, the wet well has a vent system. It doesn't vacuum.
Yeah, that's what we're
It's
hooking
already there,
up
it's already
to.
installed.
Yeah.
That's what we're hooking up to,
Yeah,
is
to
the
the
vent
vent
system is there.
Right.
And another thing is sealing all the different penetrations that are potentially gonna leak and not make it through the filter. So we're gonna be doing that as well.
See, I was asking the question, why does that sewer have such a direct odor around that lift station as opposed, that's the same sewer that comes down to the lift station right outside the city barn. Same exact sewer.
And if you talk to
It's
people
very
who live
rare.
next to the
Well,
barn.
I mean, it's there, but it's not as often as what the people around there are saying they have problems.
And we feed chemical in that Twin Beach lift station. Maybe the chemical we feed at the Grand Hotel doesn't work as well as it should be, but that's, you know, each, from County Road 1 to the Grand Hotel to Twin Beach to South Section, you know, it's kind of like the
Well,
triangle.
one explanation I was getting, I don't really follow all this, but when it starts getting aired out, so to speak, at one lift station, it's not as bad as at the next one, and it's not as bad at the
That's
next.
correct. And one of the
Once
other
you air
techniques
one
we're
out,
looking to do
yeah,
is
so
to
basically,
buy,
they get hit first.
right. And one of the techniques we're looking to do is buy compressors, and we're talking about putting air diffusers in the wet well themselves to do exactly what you're describing. And we're gonna
One thing I
test-
found, I don't know how
You're
much.
actually starting the process of treatment as you're
Right,
doing that
that's,
aerobically.
and the side stream storage tanks, we're talking about aerating, pre-aeration to do the same thing as well.
So your load on your plant's not gonna be as
Right.
much.
That's to
Would
go.
it help if we put the infiltrate, or the line that drops the sewer into the lift station? If we put an elbow on and drop it down to where the sewer only hits inside the liquid, in other words, doesn't hit air, doesn't aerate, if you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I don't know.
I don't know how much it would help, but I understand that is
Yeah,
a
I
help.
think
Talking
to
about
do-
using like the trap in your toilet.
Yeah, basically what you're doing is it's not falling and circulating the air, right? It falls directly inside a pipe.
I think
into
you'd
the
have a
liquid
T that
the
would
whole
be.
time, and then as it
That's
rises
why you
up.
don't smell, that's why you have a sink trap
Stays up.
and a trap
Yeah, I
in your
think
toilet.
you'd have a T
The
on
problem with that
line.
method, though, is because it's gonna aerate somewhere, you'd have to do it on every lift station all the way down, or somebody would get hit
Yes.
sooner or later.
And we're gonna
Just
make
the-
a bigger commitment to
Right.
studying the cause and
I was just
effect of all that.
Kicking around some ideas, and trying to figure out, you know, again, it just odd to me that, since my shop is right there next to that lift station, it's rare. You know, I smell that, or anything over there. I thought that was strange. It's the same sewer, so that's why I got to asking these questions.
Well, one of the
I
first
can put it
complaints
into
I
the
had,
lift station, I don't know much about why it stinks.
I know one of the
all the
first
time.
complaints I had from Odor Anywhere was Miss Bung talking about that particular station and not being
Unfortunately,
able to sit out
a lot
on
of
the back
times
porch
it's every
because
day
of
when
it.
you know, in reality, it happens once a month, or once or twice a week, twice a month.
Well,
Every day.
I mean, here again, though, we want to be good neighbors.
That's right. Anything we can do to fix it, we want to fix
And
it.
that's our goal.
You and I have had this discussion.
Right.
And that's absolutely correct.
So that's what we're, and we'll bring in a,
Jay, what's your thoughts on introducing that, or walking that on? You wanna wait 2 weeks?
I'll walk it on.
The 10,400, have you got something?
450,000.
10,450,000? Have you got something drafted, Richard, or can you draft us a resolution real quick?
I can try.
Yeah, I mean, this is not something that waiting 2 weeks is gonna, I mean, I don't know that.
You're not gonna change your mind?
Yeah, and I don't know that there'll be any objection to making it smell better. So that's generally my concern, is that when we change price or change service, I want people to have the opportunity to come object if they so please. I don't know that I'm gonna give any objections.
They're going to
on this.
object the other way.
Correct.
Yeah,
If we wait.
if you wait.
I feel like delaying
We're all
would
gonna
be
point
a
at your
more
mouth.
unpopular.
And then lastly, we did bid the Fairhope Avenue, Fairwood, Bayou Drive, and transmission line into the plant a week and a half ago. And Bone Construction, are you familiar with the results of the bid?
No, I'm not.
Bone Construction was the low bidder who has an outstanding reputation, and we're happy to be able to recommend them as the low bidder. But the price tag was $149,000. So it's just over $2 million for that transmission project. And of course, that takes us all the way into the plant to the headworks, which is, we're eliminating 2 parallel runs of gravity line that go into the plant property near the flooring company there on north section. And truth of the matter is, we still hadn't found the manholes that those lines connect to yet, but we're working to find them.
And I'll mention again that I've said it before, that I've learned another level of patience when we talk about restore funds, but that is part of it. That some of the rehabilitation for those funds, I don't know, we hope to have them by the end of the year, but you can't
Now, will they-
do any of the work ahead
Will
of
they
time.
reimburse you for?
They don't reimburse. That's why I
rehabilitation
said is that part is,
Right.
the only thing, you could do planning and things like that we would want to push forward anyway, but the bulk of it, we'd like to, but again, we discussed it too, this is not even going to cover all of it, so.
Well, I
Just-
know as we get deeper into some of the lift station upgrades that we'll be looking at as we move out, and they won't be so much about trying to increase capacity if we can reroute some force mains and bypass them with what currently is fed into those stations, like East of the Sun would be one. That would be a rehabilitation effort that we should be able to, but, and I don't want to put off doing things that
Right.
we know we need to do because we might get funding from another source, but I think
Because
that
it's
we
going to be
will
more than
find
that
there
anyway,
is
the
plenty
cost.
that we will still have on the board to do by the time the restore money comes in.
Correct.
And we recently bid and had the point repair contract, awarded, so we're working on our first level of those projects right now, and trying to focus on the Middle Street area, the Valley Lift Station area, where, we feel like we keep making progress. The last time it took 8 inches of rain for us to start having the overflows versus what may have been a 1.5 or 2 inch rain in the past. So we feel good about the progress, but we're still not proud to have to report overflows. So we're going to try to keep digging and keep finding where those issues are that we can clean up.
There are statistics that we could brag about, but we've chose not to because it's not, still not where we want to be.
No, I don't.
I mean, I kind of want to brag about it, but I mean,
We're happy with some of the progress we've seen. We're just not satisfied that we're where we need to
Correct.
be yet.
Best I can tell you is better than we were last year.
it's
We're
way
getting
better.
before that.
It's way better.
We're working towards it. That's the main thing.
It's just, I don't know how much patience everybody has to give us the time it
They
takes to
don't.
get over the hill. We're working on it.
Okay.
Anything else?
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
See how much
Thank
patience
you,
they got when
Richard.
we start tearing up the roads.
All right,
Well,
Mr.
we're going to get signs everywhere
Bypass
too.
all that.
nother level.
We need it fixed, but we can't go down that road.
All right, Mr. Johnson's here to talk about ATRIP-Rebuild Alabama Infrastructure Program.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Council President, Mayor, and Council. Just kind of want to make you aware of this and seek some guidance from y'all. Part of the gas tax was this program, that a certain amount of the gas tax would be put out for a competitive grant for municipalities as well as counties to do infrastructure improvements. Do want to give you a couple of highlights. There is some concern that they kind of sold it one way and delivered it another. Project eligibility very clearly states that project applications may be submitted for improvements to any state-maintained highway system, which may include local roads and bridges essential to such projects. Projects should be for public use and to benefit the traveling public large. I have spent some time reaching out to ALDOT trying to get a clarification. They refuse to give it, but basically the conclusion is that that project really has to completely intersect with a state-maintained road. So as you're thinking, we have two available to us, US 98, i.e. Greeno Road, and 104. Parts of those roads exist within our corporate limits.
Wait, it says state highway system, 98, 104, 101 doesn't qualify, 181 doesn't qualify?
Oh, yes, I'm 181, excuse me. I just
Sorry,
dropped
I
the
just
road
make
completely,
sure I'm-
completely off the radar. I'm sorry about that,
It's
Council
also within
President.
the municipal limits. So.
And I really hadn't been thinking 181 since it's ultimately getting upgraded, at least the story goes. They are guaranteeing $30 million in this fiscal year application. The maximum per project is $2 million. Now, when you do the math, that could be if 15 applications got selected that were 2 million apiece, that would eat up the whole 30 million, and we kind of know how many counties and how many cities there are in Alabama, so that's a big number, but doesn't look at
30 million for the whole state?
the statewide, yes, sir. With it eventually increasing up to 50 million on an annual basis. We get one project application per fiscal year. So if we decide we want to pursue it for this year, we get to pick one, and that's it. Where the old ATRIP, you could put 7 in, and they could pick one of the 7 that they like. This is interesting, but I want to read this to you. Local or other funding sources to supplement requested ATRIP-2 funding is not required, but projects containing a commitment to provide supplemental funding, i.e. put in the word match, may be given favorable consideration by the ATRIP-2 committee. Okay, so that's kind of the rules. The other thing is, and this is just a little gripe of mine, the governor issued the letter on July 26th. We got it on August 1st. And the deadline is August 30th. So they didn't give us a whole lot of time. With that said, with the help of Council President Burrell and his proxy, Mr. Boone, it looks like we're going to have the Gayfer Road and US 98 widening project on the agenda for the MPO, and at least at the work session that I left this past Wednesday, everything looked favorable for that. One of the projects that I thought about that if you were interested in pursuing it is the same problem that we have at Gayfer and Greeno, we have at Twin Beach and Greeno. There's no turn lanes. You have a high school, middle school there to the east and to the south. And when there's one person waiting to turn left, they can back traffic up, and then that one, they get the left turn at the yellow, and everybody's left behind. And I personally witnessed 3 cycles before you get through the intersection. That would be a qualifying project, because even though the improvements are on the Twin Beach side, it directly impacts and affects a state maintained road. Any project on 104 within our corporate limits or 181 would also be, I would think, would be eligible.
But at Twin Beach, you have a gas station to cut through. Gayfer, you don't.
That's true.
If
If you're going right, yes, but I'm always going straight there, Council President. So I never the gas station doesn't help
I'm
me.
not saying I do that. I'm just saying there's an
I think
option.
people use it.
So
Mayor looking guilty over there.
No, I don't. I don't even go that way.
Basically-
My kids
I
had
think I'll
to,
get a car
though.
wash. Oh, wait, I changed my mind. I'm going to
Exactly.
go to 98.
between Mrs. McKean, who is our grants contract person, and me, I have no problem preparing an application and moving it forward. It's a roll of the dice. We may get something, we may not, but you know, if you don't apply for a grant, you can't get a grant. So that's first thing. I'm looking for input from you if you want to pursue it this year. This is going to occur every year that the gas tax is in effect, so the increased gas tax. So there will be, annual opportunities, and hopefully we'll know the rules much better the next time and the next time. And if I was to recommend, if the Twin Beach Greeno was of interest to you, I think we submit it as 100% fund, meaning, just throw the dice and see if we can get it.
And include in the proposal that the Restore Council did vote and approve the 181 widening.
Well, they did.
That's
so-
what I consider municipal funds, but you
Okay.
just put the whole picture in there.
Yeah, I can't really think of anything I'd recommend for 181 for the fact that they're under design for a complete widening improvement through most of our corporate limits there, even though we're not sure when exactly all that's going to get done. And I can't think of and understand the portion of 104 that is on the west side of Greeno Road is considered City 104. That portion is not a
I was
state
going to
road.
ask you about Roundabout.
No, I tried to pitch
That was your
that
first
one.
thought?
Yeah, it was my first absolute thought, and they said, no, that's just one step too far removed from the state routes. So I'm just looking for some input, if y'all, because one, if you're interested, we would need to have a resolution 2 weeks from tonight.
So we think we're going to get through the MPO funds, the Gayfer widening, right?
I do.
Now,
I've been wrong before.
It was
How much of a
difficult.
Well, I
match?
can tell you this.
How much
But
of
it's
a match
going
from the
to.
city is that?
That's a 2080. So right now we're still around that $800,000. So that's 160 would be our match.
I can tell you that.
Pardon?
If they don't do it, everybody up there is a liar.
Well,
Which I
maybe
wouldn't
y'all
mind
two should
making
just
some
go
few
for
phone
us.
calls
and
and
we-
explain that to them.
I
How do you
mean,
really feel about it?
believe me,
I mean,
I said
it's
exactly
absurd.
how my thoughts during those meetings, so.
So, two things here. Do we think that maybe we should apply for a lane to be added at Twin Beach Road, which is not a bad idea at all? But do we want to try to apply for 100%? I got a feeling, if I'm judging that, they're going to say, I want to help somebody that has some skin in the game. That's just me if I'm evaluating it. You know, whether it's 10% or 20, maybe we say instead of, we could apply it 100% if you really think they're judging it and they're not looking at that at all. But I really think that they may look at that as greedy and probably would look upon things more favorably where we're trying to share in it.
Well-
Save them some money.
I mean, is there no
10%.
counter by them in this, or is it what you submit is either accepted or rejected flat?
That is what I understand. You get one application, and the committee of 9 are going to meet, and they're going to pick until the money is appropriated, so.
We did put forth for the MPO both of those streets with the turn lane, correct?
That's
And
right.
then- And we only are
Right.
doing one right now. I wonder if we could add a little piece just for the Twin Beach, because it is in the county, right?
That is correct, but let's see, let me get this straight. Twin Beach on the east side is city road. On the west side, it's still county, correct? And then, and then, of course, the US 98 is a state route, so. And, the typical on all these types of federal usually is an 80-20. I mean, and if that's the comfort level you have, I think that at least you're, saying we're willing to do like we would for any other federal aid dollars and do that. I'm just looking for guidance.
Can we improve that west side then?
The west side.
The west
Yeah.
side of that intersection?
I did talk briefly with the county, and they would have no objection for, if that was our choice of a project, that they would be cooperative and work with us, so.
What we could do is put in that 20% would be committed, but I think we still should put that into a proposal for MPO.
I don't know, can we spend 20% on that west side, 10%? Can we legally spend our money on that west side?
Oh, you mean for MPO?
For the matching part, if we were
Oh,
to
I-
match that?
I don't see why not.
Since it's county?
What?
No, it is.
County on the west side.
It's still public right of way, so, but
Right.
the calculus would be that,
But that's
that
what-
our 20%, if we did that, is on our part of the road anyway. That's the portion of the project, so.
I got you.
So I don't think there would be, any big issues there. I mean,
I
and
think
if
we
you
should-
have another location that intersects a state road that you think would be a good project, I have not been able
Those
to.
are the two highest complaints.
And I
Twin
would
Beach
go
and
with that Twin
Paper.
Beach at 80-20 because I think that that little hint
Yeah, they
that you
didn't
read
vote for
that,
nothing.
and I don't think they would look at a city like Fairhope if we're not coming up with at least 20% match. If it's only $30 million for the entire state.
And one of the concessions I did get from Aldot on the Gayfer Road, discussing about what was controlling some of the absurd cost of it, is that the existing fixtures, the poles and the cable system that supports the existing signals, is spaced wide enough where you can do the widening and don't have to relocate anything. And Aldot said that they would concede the point that they would not require us to go to mast arm poles to upgrade that intersection. That took $350,000
I thought
out.
that was a little low. so,
Okay.
That's good.
So in this case, again, if the Twin Beach has the same geometry, we could reuse the fixtures there, and you're just adding heads to what's already there as trying to keep cost in control. And at some time in the future, when we want to do that, you can always go back and retrofit with mast arm poles. So we could, I think that also, I think any project that's submitted that maxes out at the 2 million is probably going to get set aside, Nicole, because I think they're going to look at
How many
trying to spread
projects
it
can they
and how
do?
many
They're
projects.
absolutely going
Yeah.
to try to make as many people as they can happy.
So.
And that's okay too.
Okay. Well, if you are comfortable with that, we'll go ahead and get the application going and everything, and we'll have a resolution submitted to Ms. Lisa of support, and if you're okay with the 20%, we'll say we're committing to 20%, and I think price being all things being equal, it should be about the same cost as the Gayfer, so we're looking at about $160,000 match, so.
I think that's a really good investment.
Okay.
$160,000.
Agreed.
All right, well, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
RJ. Mr. King, Greeno Road Corridor Overlay Update.
That is a mouthful. Good afternoon, Council. Good afternoon, everyone. And so, Council, a brief update for you about that Greeno Road Corridor overlay, and also provide the Council with some advance notice on something that's pending. And, of course, you know, Greeno Road Corridor is working its way through the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission, they took action at their last meeting. And what the Planning Commission will do is on September 10th, they are going to hold a special meeting just for the corridor overlay. And so to allow some additional public engagement, opportunity to answer questions. They won't take action at that meeting. As a result, the earliest Planning Commission meeting at which they could consider taking action would be the October 7th meeting. And so what we wanted to provide the council with some advance notice about is that because of that meeting occurring on October 7th, the current ordinance number 1631, which is a temporary moratorium on development along Greeno Road, that would expire on October 1st. And so we wanted to provide the council with some advance notice that it may be advantageous for the council to extend that moratorium. And we wanted to advise council that the staff recommendation would be to extend that moratorium until the Greeno Road corridor is either adopted or rejected by council.
So, Mr. King, when the Planning Commission takes action, what does that action look like? Is that a vote on a recommendation?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So they would recommend to, with the exception of tabling, either recommend to approve, deny, or approve with conditions of approval that might be some of their edits. But that would have to occur before we can send it to the council for consideration.
Is there a way that when they make, if they make edits, and when they do, there probably would be some edits that we could see that as well, because we'd like to also see it in a raw form. And I'm not saying that we wouldn't accept it 100%, but, you know, maybe we, as a council, would say that, yeah, they struck this, but we really want to keep that in, hypothetically. It's nice to see the whole instrument before.
And Mr. Council President, that's a great comment. And what we've tried to do typically in previous actions when an item is acted upon by the Planning Commission forward to the City Council is show both the staff's recommendation as well as the Planning Commission's recommendation, because from time to time the Planning Commission may have additional requirements. So what we'll make certain is when we reflect the staff recommendation and the Planning Commission recommendation, if any edits.
Yeah. It could be in
Exactly.
an appendix or something like that.
Yes,
Let's
sir.
say they outlaw bookstores on Greeno Road.
Sure.
We want to say,
I'd have a problem with
we don't
that.
want to outlaw bookstores.
That's true.
Oh, wait,
hypothetically.
Greeno? Greeno?
Hypothetically.
Yes, sir.
Maybe not.
Hypothetically.
So council members, that's a great point, and that is essentially a built-in process, but we certainly recognize, especially in this case, we certainly need to illuminate the any changes or edits recommended by the Planning Commission. So we'll certainly do that. Certainly do that. Council members, if you can indulge me for just a brief moment, can I comment on the tonight's agenda just very briefly?
Absolutely.
So items.
Save us time in the agenda.
Yes, sir. And so council members, Planning Department does not have any items on tonight's agenda, but Jessica Walker asked me if I would announce something very briefly to the council. Items 6, 9, and 11. She's unable to be with us at work session today as she is meeting the teacher at her children's school, but she said she will definitely be here for the regular meeting if called upon to address those items.
6, 9, and 11.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And Planning, we have no items on this regular meeting agenda.
Okay.
And so council will work with Ms. Hanks on putting together an extension ordinance at the appropriate time at a future meeting. So that would probably be in early September, Lisa, most likely.
That's what I would think.
Very good. All right, council, thank you so much.
I thought you did a good job, by the way, at the planning commission meeting. I know that was it was a very detailed and lengthy presentation, but
Well, Councilman, I appreciate that very much. It is my honor to be able to serve this community and serve this city, and that sometimes requires me to talk a lot more than I'd like to, but I'm happy to be able to do it.
Well, I will say that at our supervisor meeting Friday, he made a very funny comment and said that our new employee, which I'll be introducing during my mayor comments, that was his first planning commission meeting for the work session, and he came back to work the next day. So
That's right. So we're
We're
ahead
very
of
happy.
we're ahead of the game already. Thank you, everyone.
All right, committee updates. Councilman Conyers?
sure. I've got library board is taking the month of July off just for vacation and travel schedule, but they have already submitted a proposed budget for the upcoming year. I know that we're about to enter into that process. So that proposed budget did not include a build out of their additional space. It was not enough time to figure out exactly what all they would need to do there. So that may come back at a later date with a recommendation for some build out of that space, depending on what they decide to recommend. The Historic Planning Commission or Historic Preservation Committee is meeting this Wednesday, and they had submitted a draft ordinance to form a Historic Preservation Commission, and I sent that around for review just for informational purposes. I think they would like to be on a future council work session just to present some of their ideas with that and get some feedback from the council. I know, again, Mayor, we've got a lot of budgetary items coming up, so if we can find a date to work that in, that would be great. But I know that we're going to be coming up against budget.
We'll start next work session for budget presentations, and then I would like for council, instead of me coming and saying what works for you for the meetings afterwards, is for council to look at when it's proposed and by the end of September how many times you want to meet, so we can get an approval on October 1st or as close to October 1st as we can.
Okay.
So.
And then Environmental Advisory Board met this past Friday, had some good discussion in that group and some recommendations coming forward from there, which I will update everyone on via email. So that's it.
Okay, and I'm not scanning my emails. I'm looking for my calendar for some meetings, but anyway. Councilman Boone?
We have a harbor board meeting this month, but I gotta find out when it is. Unfortunately, I don't recall it. And other than that, it's the only meeting we've had, or we wanna have. I don't really have anything to report.
Okay. Councilman Robinson?
Nothing to report.
Okay. We are putting together, it is tomorrow, I thought it was, so we haven't had an Industrial Development Board meeting in a while since the passing of the president of that board. And we just appointed some new members recently to that, and so we'll have our first meeting tomorrow in the Dell Champs room at 5 p.m. So if you want to come out and attend the Industrial Development Board meeting, feel free. Probably going to be a little bit of a reorganization going on there. And I know that we have been approached by at least one corporation in Fairhope that's trying to go through some organic growth and maybe looking for some tax abatements. And when it's time to tell everyone, they don't like to tell their business. But when I'm able to, I'll tell you who it is. It's somebody that we're all familiar with. It's a very good company that's located here in Fairhope that's thinking of expanding. Also, on the Airport Authority, we have been informally approached about putting a flight school out at the airport. It's something that's needed out there, and they're talking about private pilot's license and also up to multi-engine ratings. So That's just something that's being informally proposed right now, and I'll keep you all abreast on that. So it'd be a good addition to our airport. With that, the other, I would ask you, that is on agenda item 6 tonight. I'm the liaison for the council on the Museum of History Committee, and I would ask you to please support the item 6, the Fairhope Museum Advisory Board and bylaws. They've spent a lot of time cleaning those up, and there was some, I wouldn't call it confusion, but it's just, there needed to be some clarity in its rules. So I believe they've done a good job of putting together a real thorough list of bylaws. So that I'll close committee updates, and department heads, if you have anything, I'm looking at you, Eric, first. So anything to share with the council? You said no, and then you walk up.
There's one thing I'm getting a lot of questions about. Right next to the high school on Twin Beach Road, I've probably been asked this like 10 times in the last 2 weeks. The clearing you see on that east side is a mini storage complex. It's a big mini storage complex. That property is unzoned. It's in the county. They are meeting all ALDOT, City of Fairhope drainage, and building code requirements. So that is what is going on that property. And I've been asked that a bunch about what's going on there, so I figured I would let you know when you get the call.
I just, every time something breaks ground, it's a Lowe's from what I hear. It's always a Lowe's or Home Depot.
Mine.
Not quite a Lowe's, but yeah.
Chief Ellis?
No, sir.
Okay. Anything else, Michael?
Couple agenda items tonight, but nothing.
Okay. Tamara, since you're here, anything from the library?
Just, we're so excited still. We're moving forward.
Okay.
We've got a lot of plans.
All right. Very good.
Thank
Jay?
you.
You're welcome. Anything? Okay. Kim?
I do have just one thing, just to kind of get an opinion on, it's kind of like we had last week or 2 weeks ago, pump, go out. It was kind of like emergency. I called you to say, hey, what do we do? It's over a limit. And that's what I'm running into, some of the utilities on the limits of purchasing. And so like the case that Richard Paterson, I don't know if he's still here, it's a little over the $10,000 amount. And then we're having to like try to get something on the meeting. I don't know if y'all are interested in, on the utility side, bumping that dollar
And
amount
Public
up.
Works.
Just be able to bump that up where it's not an emergency that I'm having to get something on the agenda to wait. And of course, what we did is we ordered the pump because it was a lift station, had 2 pumps. One pump went down. We went ahead and ordered it. It's on the agenda, but it's already been installed. And I'm just trying to figure out a way that we can not be stopped or having to wait for that meeting, especially if there's 3 weeks. If that's something you're interested in, I don't want to work on it if it's like, okay, we don't want to do that.
I think that when it's like an emergency repair or maintenance item, we can come up with some language for that. What do y'all think?
And the other thought that I was trying to just kind of toss around, just, what I know from the county, the county side, it was checks. So every check had to go through the county commission to be voted on. And so we created a policy, and it was an interim. And, we had a list of things that could be in that time period that could be done. But then if it was, the chairman was one that a department head could call the chairman and say, hey, I need this done. The treasurer would okay it. And then on the next meeting, as part of the minutes, we put it on part of the minutes that these were things that was in the interim that had to be done. And I didn't know if that was something we could do a policy that, here Jay calls me or comes to me and says, hey, we've got to have this done. I call the council president. He says, okay, yeah, that's an emergency. We go ahead and do it, and on the next council meeting, we just make it part of the minutes to let them know that this is something we're doing. Just trying to find a way we can smooth things that, if we're having to wait to another meeting and they've got a problem and it is over $10,000, we just need, some more guidance or something we can tweak a little bit.
Thoughts on that, council?
Do we have any idea as to what the increased limit would look like? I mean, what is the best, you know, I mean.
Yeah, as soon as you raise it to 20, then you get something that's 21.
And I know any increase in.
It's
limit
lower than it
would-
was last term, though.
Yeah, I mean, I know that
I
any
mean,
increase in
that's the
limit
main
would
thing.
provide some additional flexibility, but I just, you know,
That-
it kind of need to know what that,
And that's gonna be something like to get with Jay and the utilities, because that's mainly where I'm seeing it, is not on the general fund side that we're having to get an emergency on a road, you know, or.
If you get a transformer that blows up in the middle of the night, that's $40,000. I mean, you know, there's still got to be some vehicle.
That's right. I mean, but the 10,000 I do think is too low. That pump, Jay, that pump was just over 15,000?
Yeah.
It was just over 15,000. So I'm looking at that, somewhere that's around the 15,000, you know, but I need y'all to have a comfort level, and is a comfort level of us being able to do that, call the, you know, the council president and say, hey, here's the situation, and then the next meeting say, here's things that we had to do, and if you're gonna put it in the record.
I've got no issue with that.
You know, that's where I'm trying to define, so we can just, we're not trying to fight fires, I'm trying to get a green sheet done, or for tonight, Richard Peterson is saying, we have something that's $10,000, can we walk it on, because I've gotta have it.
Right.
Yeah, but, you know, and like, you know, that one, it's a simple thing and it's easy, but it's not an emergency either. And I don't want to get into that habit of walking things on a lot and doing things in haste when 2 weeks, you know, don't matter. Sometimes when it's a small expense, and for our budget, $10,000 is not a big expense. I don't really have a problem with that because it's probably a foregone conclusion. We'd approve it anyway, but it is a bad habit to get into because it just creeps up on you. Next thing you know, you're doing it for things that aren't as important, or, you know, they're a little bit more expensive. But I don't have a problem if the council does, and if you want to, because what I would do is, if I had to make a call on something that was an emergency expense, I would call a council member. I'd call one and bounce it off of them, and probably call you and the department head and say, explain what's going on.
And that's what we did that day, you
Yeah,
know, because
right.
I called you, Jay's in there, we went through the whole scenario, you know, and of course, I'm thinking, well, if that other second pump went out, the city's got a problem.
Yeah, but I think that it has to be reported, actually reported and voted on at the next meeting.
I agree, but this all goes into the discussion we've been having for 3 years, and that's the limits are too low. They're lower than they were last term, and we have a bigger budget now. We have to look at ways to be more efficient. I mean, the utilities are a business. This is an operating expense that there just has to be a better way to do business.
And I had asked Kim that question, was this, you know, do we have a maintenance budget that this could just come out of if it's a maintenance item that just wore out, you know? If
Yes,
it's
we do.
Yeah.
But we still have to get every line item approved. And that, the reality is it's just, it stagnates efficiency and.
Yeah, I think this
It's-
really goes back to that meeting that we had and Lynn was, and she's not here today, I was gonna ask her, for an update, but she was gonna bring back the recommendations from that meeting, and I would just lump this
Right.
in with that as
And we
part of
definitely
that whole
had a lot of
process.
discussions about it.
Well, I think if we could do it all at one time, that'd be my preference, to see it, all the proposed recommendations at the same time, but I certainly wouldn't have an issue with doing something to make things more efficient.
Well, we'll work with, I know those meetings were prior to me being
Right.
here, so I'll get up to date with the other staff members, and I just want to get a feel for a direction.
Sure.
I'd say there's a warm fuzzy for that.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, good,
Mhm.
thank y'all.
Okay. Tom? Anything out of gas? Yeah.
Yeah.
Police? Shane? RJ?
The flower clock is back in and working, and the cattail sculpture at the roundabout 4813 is installed, and it looks nice.
I haven't
Thank
seen it
you.
yet.
It's there.
Can't miss it.
Can't miss it, brother. Big old bowl with spears sticking out of it. I say, you get close enough, though, they look just like cat. They just look like cat.
That's perfect.
Mr. King, anything? All right. Did I miss anybody? Okay. All right, let's jump into the agenda real quick. On item number 5, Officer Nolte, if we call on you to give a police perspective on that, are you prepared to do so on the ordinance? Okay, yeah. Pardon me? I said officer, didn't I? Oh, lieutenant, officer, well, if you say officer, you got them all covered.
Looking out.
Yeah. I didn't say private. Item 6, I can cover that. Museum Advisory Board bylaws. Item 7, that's just some vehicle to negotiate with Baldwin County Board of Education to allow them, now that we own the Pelican's Nest, to allow them to use the Pelican's Nest for the educational purposes. This is not an agreement, but I need some input on what you guys think we would do with this. I mean, if they're using it, for instance, but it's our building, I mean, we become responsible for the maintenance of it. And
I think the Baldwin County Board of Education at one point offered to move it to a school where it would be more accessible to students and used more, because right now it's not accessible. I mean, my kids went there one time in 12 years, and I think if we can get them to do that, it would be really, really good for everybody.
Mayor, you're stating that if they moved it and got more use out of it, you're okay with that. Does anybody have any opinions?
I mean,
I saw Casey here.
Yeah, she's. I do know they go a lot more now, and I know my kids go multiple times per year.
They could go a lot more if it was accessible. I mean, because you have to bus them there.
Yeah, I mean, we by all means, we want to keep that in Fairhope.
Absolutely.
At all costs, right? I wouldn't say all costs, you know what I mean by that. I wouldn't say the cost is in money, but.
I agree at all costs.
Okay.
Well, I'd even thought about, with the project getting ready to happen down at the pier, you know, that might be a nice tie-in.
Yeah, I
you know,
always
but
thought
I mean,
that it was there because it was an easy walk through the
right.
bay.
I mean, it is all incorporated into that learning experience, and that's what we want to do with this project as well. I mean, obviously, we would talk to them, but
Let me just talk
I think
to
a
them
more
and come
accessible
back. I mean,
location would
this
be
doesn't
good.
have to be quickly done. I'll come back with some thoughts once I talk to them and get a feel for what, they're thinking. I'll get to you, Mayor, and let you know what they're thinking on that as well. You can come along with me and find out what they're thinking.
wow. I mean, thank you.
Don't fall out of your chair.
I'm falling out of my chair.
Okay, item number 8. Mr. Peterson, are you still here? Is that going to be RP or is that going to be you, Michael, to talk about that?
That's going to be, that's
Me.
just for the increase in design.
Okay.
Engineering contract.
Now, he mentioned that they had spoken to the residents. Oh, he was saying that was the Twin Beach station, though, and they ran into a little snag, right?
No, that's this one.
That's this one?
Yeah, that's just for the design so that I can do the public forum sessions.
Okay, yeah, I see this would be relocating the Fairhope Avenue station to Morphe, but you sent a letter to all of the residents there, right?
Correct. And I'm not asking for the increase in the budget to go forward with it, just to get the design done so that when we have our public meetings in the fall, we have the design to present.
Okay, so you're asking for the $100,000 then?
Yes, not the 1.5, I'm not ready to ask for the construction cost.
Okay, council, if y'all have questions, then we'll ask Michael or Richard. Item 9, we have Jessica's name by that, the extension number 1 for the professional advertising and public relations for community development.
I can just
what
say that
exactly, and that's not a lot of money. Remind me what they're doing.
this is the bi-monthly Fairhope Connect. It goes into the utility bill and also the flyers around town. So it won't be, it'll miss one printing before the budget passes.
Okay, then what is the, I'm going to skip over, I'm going to come back to 10. I'm going to skip over that and then go to 11. Oh, this is for the printing.
Oh, she's back.
Oh, you're here. Okay. Okay, Jessica.
9 is for design.
9 is design, 11 is printer.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. And back to number 10. Who would, Roger, would that be you?
I can speak to
Yeah, can you speak to that a little bit now and save a few minutes? I'm kind of curious, is this for something specific? Because, and the reason I ask that is, I know that he was on several of the teams that were presenting to try to be awarded the design and engineering for the working waterfront. Is this something separate? Is this a continuation of what's going on at the parking garage, or is this just on call, whatever we need?
As you recall, last year, we brought this to you, and you approved it with a not to exceed monthly, and of course, it would equal to a not to exceed annually. And for example, the last bill that I saw, that he did some graphics for the Greeno Road overlay corridor, that was like 3 different little projects he's worked on. He did the landscape package for when we redid the landscaping around the clubhouse at the Quail Creek. So this is just on call based upon an hourly rate. I do not think we got anywhere close to these numbers this past fiscal year, but the contract was, as you know, for 1 year, and
Which were independent of other contracts.
That is
Yeah,
correct.
but
That
these
is
were
correct.
The miscellaneous.
Yeah, so if Tom Cool needs some landscape architectural services, he can, and he will sign off, and it'll come out of his portion of his operating expense to cover those professional services.
He did
So,
Quail Creek and
yeah.
did actually a lot of projects last year.
So we'd like to keep him on board.
Thank you, Richard. Item 12, who will speak to the Winterland installation of the lights? Would that be you, Michael? Hey, I just have one question about that right now. Are we required to extend this for an additional year? Did we sign a 3-year contract with them?
I do not know off the top of my head. I'd have to-
We're going to rebid next year in January.
I know we're planning on rebidding everything next
I
year.
mean, in other words, if we were to not approve this, is that reneging on the contract?
I'd have to look at the contract
Uh,
itself.
It's not going to leave us time to do everything we've been trying to do, and it's great that they've given 4 months of the year to our electric employees, but we're just not going to.
I understand. I'm trying to, just look at all
I think it
the,
was a year at a time, and we can go up to the 3 years. And my understanding from Dee Dee is, she had to go and ask, hey, do you agree to continue at the same rate?
Right.
So I think that's the reason y'all
Well, I
are
mean,
here to vote.
we're putting up more lights than they bid originally. I mean, the lights and the trees are denser now. And so we just have a lot more of them. And of course, the growth of the trees too, increases it every year. I know we did trim last year, but we did more trees. So,
item 13 is pretty standard. That's an annual thing for Munis software, licensing fees for that. Item 14, I don't know much about that. Who can speak to item 14, which is the Q-Send, Q-Alert software?
Jeff is on, he's off, but Jessica and I can speak to it. This is enhancing the customer service for our citizens so that there is a tracking mechanism. This is basically a platform for taking in calls, but it's also giving citizens the platform for texting, messaging. All of the information is retained, so we want to prevent people calling and saying, well, I've spoken to this person, I've spoken to this person, I've spoken to this person, and we still don't have a resolution. So it offers citizens to be a part of the resolution. It can be tracked, and we can update them very easily.
Yeah, so basically what it's going to do is enable us to track these by address and by citizen. So if somebody moves and there is the same complaint coming from the same address, it kind of gives us this historical reference, whereas now we don't really have that option. It gives us a historical reference to better meet those needs. It also tracks it, so if it has not been responded to within a certain amount of time, it pings the people who are connected to it. So
And
does that answer your question?
Well, I can
Councilman?
go into it more
Yeah.
during the meeting if you need me to, but it's going to address a lot of issues that when someone calls, taking the time to enter all that information for the benefit of the next person is time consuming, but it's also very time consuming to require the next person to call them back. So when you have this type of thing and you're responding in the way that they've, asked the question, it's going to save a lot of time internally.
So are there going to be somebody actually answering them?
The
or-
same employees that answer calls right now will handle all of this in an easier platform.
Okay,
that-
so it'll be installed on their computers, and then they will, is it fairly user-friendly?
It is incredibly
Very
user-friendly.
user-friendly.
Absolutely. And the ability to track the complaints and really to track the response time is super helpful for our
And it
citizens.
builds
So they probably
accountability.
have most of the common complaints already packaged in this, and it's a drop down.
Absolutely.
And you
Yes.
check them
And it
off.
also integrates with Twitter. So if people are complaining through Twitter, it kind of integrates with that and makes it a little bit more user-friendly. So that gives us the Twitter as a customer service.
All right, council, so you can ask Ms. Walker or Mayor Wilson if you have any more questions when that comes back up. Item 15, I tell you what, we'll skip the rest of them. Let's adjourn and convene here in about 2 or 3 minutes. We're out of time.